Wait a minute, that looks like an S-Class, but is it? No, the new design just seems to stretch the car visually. This is the final revealed version of the 2020 Mercedes E-Class Facelift, in this case the AMG line. We already have shown you a preview with driving along. Check that out later for more information. Let's dig deeper now into the changes on exterior, interior, infotainment and technology. We'll also take a look at different trim levels. We have the sedan as AMG line here, as well as the estate all-terrain, both exterior and interior. Since Geneva Motor Show 2020 has been cancelled due to the coronavirus, we deliver you this insight without being on location ourselves. You know, we always try to keep up the best service for you, no matter what we face. Relax and enjoy. So here we are, the new Mercedes E-Class now starts as the Avantgarde trim, and the Avantgarde and AMG line with the diamond pin grille both carry the central Mercedes star. So for the first time the base E-Class will have the central Mercedes star and not the small one on the top. With the exclusive line, however, it will still be available. The facelift makes the front stronger. The bumpers are bolder, and Avantgarde, AMG line and all-terrain also receive these power domes accentuations on the hood. Only the exclusive line remains a little bit more subtle in this case. So a base E-Class will in any case look sportier than before. All the changes do count for all body versions, by the way. Sedan long wheelbase for China, estate, all-terrain, coupe and cabriolet. New LED headlamps are standard. Optional, you can get the multi-beam LED with an even more extended high beam function. The headlamps are now flatter and more integrated and show a new LED signature, now with only one stripe. Before they used 1, 2 or 3 stripes to differentiate between the C-Class, E-Class and S-Class. That seems to be gone now. You get some new colors as well as 5 new wheel designs, also a new aerodynamic wheel. In general, wheels go up to 20 inch in size. At the rear, even the lights of the sedan or limousine are now drawn more horizontally. Beforehand, coupe and cabriolet looked way sportier than the sedan due to that in comparison. Due to the redesign of the rear lights, the sedan also receives a new trunk lid. The all-terrain version adds again plastic wheel arches for a crossover look. Front grille contrast and lower underbody cover now come in high gloss. The interior features 2 completely new steering wheels. The standard steering wheel features closed areas left and right of the center. The AMG version shows 2 horizontal button areas, each with a gap in between. In both cases, the buttons do deliver a kind of feedback, but they are rather integrated than standing out. Well, easier to wipe it clean for sanitation, right? Didn't think I ever talked about that in a car review. Times are changing, but on the other hand, we all agree here that the new steering wheel looks fancy from the distance, but that these new integrated buttons look and feel cheap if you compare them with the galvanized real buttons and jog wheels that were there before. They delivered you a more haptical feedback. One new feature is, however, central for assisted driving. The steering wheel is now capacitive. What does it mean? Before, you could receive false negatives from the lane keeping assist when driving a motorway just straight, warning you that you are supposed to keep your hands on the steering wheel. Reason for that is that the steering wheel had a movement sensor and needed to be moved from time to time. Now it just realizes when you do touch the steering wheel, and that's of course better for that kind of function. Biggest update is the infotainment system, and we got a little surprise there. We already knew that it now only comes digital, even in the base version, even in the taxi version. What we didn't know is that the base digital setup is 2 x 10.25 inch and that you optionally get the bigger 12.3 inch screens. Yeah, what a bummer. You once thought they make it easy and the base version gets the fancy screens, and then the German premium manufacturer extreme option price list, let's confuse the customer and get more money from them policy came to an end. But then, well, that's how it is. But at least already the smaller dual screen setup comes with the new very good MBUX infotainment unit that features a natural voice input. That comes handy. And still, the E-Class comes with sustainable and animal-friendly seating choices like fabric or high-grade leatherette, Artico or MB-Tex. Concise offers depend on market specifications, but next to Tesla, Mercedes does most in this respect so far. But sadly, as for press and marketing vehicles, with exception to the latest concept car presentation at the CES, Mercedes tends to show off how many cows they are able to put in the vehicle, like we see right here. You need about 4 cow highs to cover that surface usually. With the new so-called Urban Guard, Mercedes, by the way, now extends the theft security. For example, you can receive messages to your smartphone when someone tries to break into your car or when someone hits your car while parking. Urban Guard Plus furthermore adds GPS tracking to share with the police. So maybe they'll also release some stickers for the car now saying, "This vehicle is being tracked," like "We don't leave cash overnight at restaurants," or "Armed response" signs for homes in Beverly Hills. Well, as for engines, Mercedes upgrades the plug-in hybrid portfolio. You'll receive 2 plug-in hybrid petrols and 1 diesel, both 2-liter 4-cylinder based. Oh, by the way, I tend to say PHEV cause it just sounds cooler, but others say PHEV, but I think that sounds somewhat lame, doesn't it? It doesn't differ too much from BEV for solely battery electric vehicles and PHEV, a little bit too long. What do you think? As for non-plug-in hybrid vehicles, the portfolio will start with 150 horsepower 4-cylinder for the petrols and will end at about 360 horsepower 6-cylinder, and the diesel will go from 160 horsepower 4-cylinders to about 325 horsepower with a 6-cylinder. 2 petrols will also feature MHEV technology, as 2-liter 4-cylinder with 270 horsepower and a 3-liter 6-cylinder with 367 horsepower, each plus around 20 horsepower electric horsepower. Oh, by the way, so we say MHEV, that's why I also say PHEV, otherwise it would be MEV for MHEV, and that'd be weird, got it? PHEV, BEV, MEV? No way. Driving-wise, most changes will affect the assistance systems. Talked about the capacitive steering wheel before. Furthermore, the Distronic Adaptive Cruise Control will now take map data into account and can reduce the speed in advance before a traffic jam appears in the line of sight. Parallel, the car gives back information to the cloud of existing traffic jams. The lane keeping assist also takes emergency corridors into account now, so it aligns left at the left lane and right at the right lane when being stuck in a traffic jam, so emergency vehicles can still pass without all cars aligning to the middle. That indeed can be a problem so far with existing traffic jam assistance systems. The standard autonomous emergency brake assist now also recognizes crossing traffic and reacts accordingly. The blind spot monitor now also offers a feature that it warns while standing still, for example when cyclists approach from the rear. And the 360-degree camera was improved and is now panning when moving the steering wheel. That is done electronically with the chosen part of the image. The camera does not move physically. As for suspensions, you'll still receive the standard suspension, the adaptive suspension and the optional air suspension. The air suspension has been updated in a few hardware parts. The base suspension now sits 50 mm lower to improve wind resistance and fuel economy. However, we didn't feel it would be uncomfortable during our first ride, even in the most, so to say, uncomfortable setup with lowered base suspension plus 20-inch wheels. That still worked. Wouldn't maybe recommend it for the best comfort, but that was quite amazing that it still delivered a good feeling of comfort. So let's conclude. The new Mercedes E-Class Facelift, or Mercedes E-Klasse, how we originally say in Germany, delivers a sportier look already for the base version. The new rear lamps also account for that. The interior gives you a better infotainment system and everything all digital, even if it comes in 2 sizes. In driving, the E-Class remains very comfortable and offers even more assistance systems. What do you guys think? This is the new top-of-the-line 911, the Porsche 911 Turbo S. Let's enjoy some introduction shots before we get going with all the things you need to know about the most powerful model of the Porsche 992 generation. Let's go! The all-new 911 generation has become 4.5 cm or almost 2 inches wider in the front. It also counts for the new Turbo S. LED headlamps are now standard. The Turbo S receives more air intakes in the front than the lower entry models, but at the same time a better aerodynamic setting than before. Already the front spoiler is extendable. You get wider tires in the rear than in the front. For the Turbo S, that is 20-inch in the front and 21-inch in the rear. The door handles flip out when opening the car. At the rear, the Turbo S receives a typical rear wing in a very big fashion or style, which also has an extended downforce position. Rectangular tailpipes in high gloss black finish the rear. And the 911 Turbo S will of course also be available as convertible again. Whereas the base engine is a 3-liter 6-cylinder flat turbo with 385 horsepower, the S comes with 450 horsepower. The new 911 Turbo S features 3.8 liters of displacement and 650 horsepower with 2 turbochargers, 70 horsepower more than its predecessor, and overall 800 Nm of torque. This means 2.7 seconds to 100 km or 62 miles an hour, 0.2 seconds faster than before. And 0 to 200 km an hour or 125 miles per hour is 8.9 seconds, a second faster than the previous generation. These impressive figures are realized by the all-wheel drive system. Actually, up to 500 Nm of torque can be transported to the front wheels. Top speed is 330 km an hour or 205 miles per hour. Yeah, right. Porsche Active Suspension Management, PASM, has been lowered by 10 mm, and that's standard, as well as the sport exhaust system with a special valve. In the interior you get more infotainment inside with that 10.9-inch screen. Carbon fiber deco elements are dominant. The seats sadly only come in animal skin as standard. Oh, and we already have the prices, taking Germany as reference: 216k euros for the coupe, 230k for the convertible. Ouch. So what do you guys think? The new 911 Turbo S? Leave us your comments.
Hi, I'm Brian. Welcome to Autogefühl and welcome to Lisbon, Portugal, where we have come to give you a very exclusive behind-the-scenes look at the brand new Audi A3 Sportback. In 1996 is when the A3 first exploded into Audi's lineup, and this is now its fourth generation. Since the mid-90s, it's sold 5 million units. So to say that this is an important revision to Audi's lineup might be a little bit of an understatement. Well, you always have to be careful when you're redesigning something that's popular. You don't, of course, want to throw out the things that make the car popular, but you do have to be offering something significantly new and different in order to keep those new customers coming in. So, just how have Audi got on with that challenge? We will be taking a full look at the exterior of the car, the interior of the car, showing you how some of that new tech that, of course, the car is coming with has been integrated within the car's design, and, of course, giving you our first thoughts. So, come with us and let's take a closer look. 1.82 m or 6 feet in width, there is a lot to talk about in the new front of the A3. In case you're thinking it already looks that much more dynamic as it sits here, I should tell you that it is now 3 centimeters, and I guess that's just a little over an inch, so about that much wider than its predecessor. And you can already see right from the first glance how that relates to the design language. Now, there are 3 exterior trim levels available for this car. That's the base, the advanced, and the S-line. What you are looking at here is the advanced trim level. And the way that that distinguishes itself from the other available options are that we have a chrome surround for this large front grille, and we also have chrome details elsewhere on the lights, but we'll come on to those in a bit more detail in a minute. If you go with the base, you're going to get a matte black surround that matches this grille, and if you go with the S-line, then you get what they've described as platinum design features. So a little bit duller, but more metallic feeling than what you can see here. Well, the first things to mention about the changed front of this car are really about the increased dynamism and the angularity that you now get. Now, at first glance, you might not realize quite what a big departure this is from what's gone before, but there's an awful lot of design happening here. And to take a really closer look as to how that impacts on the overall aesthetic, I think the best place to look is going to be the lighting clusters. When approaching the design of the new A3, Audi really wanted to emphasize its sporty elements, and you can really see that here in the redesigned front light grille. Now, standard across all lines, you will get LED headlamps, but if you want this, and this is full matrix LED, it is available as an option. Now, a lot of times manufacturers will just use that as a fancy term for lights that are a bit more adaptable, but that really has been incorporated into the design here. Depending on which of the design lines you go with, the front light signature will actually be completely different within this segment here. So if you're really enthusiastic about styling, that's something worth paying attention to. Slightly further down, well, again, you can see that it's an advanced feature that you have this chrome effect around what are solid air intake points. Now, if you go with the S-line, that's even more sporty, and there you have a lot wider of an air diffuser effect here, and a lot more understated platinum effect round at the side here. All of these features add up to give you a much more sporty, much more aggressive front appearance of this car. And if that carries through to the side, well, it's going to make for a very dynamic appearance indeed. 4.34 m or 14 feet and 2 inches is what the new A3 comes in at. And just for nice similarity, that is about 3 centimeters longer than the predecessor, or the same addition as the width. But the difference being, whereas with the width, you can notice that in the interior of the car for the length, that's all about the crash protection provided at the front, so no change to the dynamic room inside the car. Now, For my taste, the side is where the A3 really starts getting interesting. And the reason for that is partly due to its massive popularity. Because this car has been so successful with such a wide cross-section of customers, the redesign of it needs to speak to a very wide variety of different needs, and you can see that heavily reflected in the design. What do I mean by that? Well, for some customers, this is going to represent a sporty, agile, small car. For other customers, this is going to represent a smaller version of a large car. Sound contradictory? Well, it is a little bit, and you can understand the impact that's had on the visual aesthetic here. So I can see all kinds of nice design elements that tie into Audis that have gone before, and some futuristic new ones as well. Take a look, for example, at this roof rail here. So that is very evocative of the Avant styling. But if I come lower down the flank, look at this chiseled mark in the lower third of the door here. Now, to me, that's very reminiscent of the Q2. But don't worry, we're going to speak to the man responsible for the design of this in a minute, who's going to tell me that that's all wrong. What I want really to draw your attention to before we talk to him is just how many things there are happening visually in the side flank of this car. There are so many different visual levels to look at, with all of these design characteristics drawing your eye to different places. And the reason I find that personally so impressive is that it means that this car can be what you personally want it to be. If you want to interact with this as a sporty, stylish, dynamic, small car, well, you can interpret it that way visually. If you want to see the size and the space, these lines give you that freedom to do that as well. Now, of course, I'm not going to be able to talk to you about the side aesthetic of this car without mentioning these wheels right here. Now, for those very keen-eyed viewers who like to make an assessment before they're told, I'll give you just a second to tell me what size you think these are. 19 inches. So it won't come as a huge surprise to you to learn that they are not standard. Standardly, if you go with the base model or the advanced line for exterior, you're going to be getting 16-inch wheels. If you go to the S line, that's 17-inch. But these 19 inches, well, they are provided by Audi Sport, and they are going to cost you an extra €3,000. So, if you like them, you're going to need to pay. 1.43 meters or 4'7" is the height of the new A3, which is exactly the same as the outgoing model. But there are a couple of things to pay attention to, and that's down here. There are 3 different suspensions to choose from. The base, or you can go with a sport suspension, and that drops the ride height of the car by 15 millimeters, or there's adaptive suspension, and that drops the ride height of the car by 10 millimeters. So, depending on how low you want to go, the choice is yours. Let's talk about the rear of the new A3. Well, here again, we have to talk about the difference of options that are available on the back of this car. If you're going with the base model, you're going to notice that mostly in the lower part here. And this will just be a matte black finish. This is the advanced trim level. So here we have this chrome effect. If you go up to the S line, you will get a custom air diffuser on the back and more of that platinum, so really dark matte chrome effect at the bottom. Other than that, everything's going to look pretty familiar. And I have to say, if I had to sum up the back of this car, I'm going to go with very clean. Really, there's a lot happening in the front and side here. So I think the main feeling with the back is to make sure it finishes off in an elegant, non-confrontational manner. You've got lots of different levels happening here visually that make the rear of this car seem as small as you would want it to be. This is not a huge car, but again, it is not a small car. So visually, you have to be presented with enough that's interesting to look at, from the spoiler up here right down to this nice boot line and the bumper at the bottom. So it's not making the biggest statement in the world, but I think that's probably a good thing. It's really perfectly pleasant and does still continue that theme of dynamism and sportiness that the rest of the car has promised. So what happens when we open it up? Well, let's take a closer look. As you would expect, there are also lots of exciting things to be discovered in the engine compartment of this car. But let's have a look at this one and see what it's harboring. Well, there we are. At market launch, you can have your choice of 3 different engines. What you're currently looking at is the 1.5-litre TFSI producing 150 horsepower, and that's been combined with a 6-speed manual gearbox. You can also pick from one of two 2-litre TDI engines, producing either 116 or 150 horsepower. The least powerful of those comes with the 6-speed manual, and the most powerful comes with a 7-speed S-tronic gearbox. But 2 weeks after launch or thereabouts, you should also be able to get a 3-cylinder 1-litre TFSI producing 110 horsepower, or, and this is the exciting one, a 1.5-litre TFSI. We already talked about that, but this time combined as a mild hybrid with a 48-volt system and a 7-speed S-tronic gearbox. Now, that promises to deliver a fuel efficiency of around about 0.4 litres for every 100 kilometres that you drive. And that's largely in part because it can recuperate up to 12 kilowatts of power. And it can glide for 40 full seconds with the engine completely off. So, hybrids are all about where Audi is heading to with the new A3. So that's just what's going to be available closely after launch. But plug-in hybrid models are going to be following hot on the heels. That's their approach to how they can best produce dynamic performance from the engine lineup that they have heavily modified for this car. What do I mean by that? Well, you may have been thinking in terms previously of the 1.6-litre engine. You're now going to be able to get that kind of power out of these 1.5-litre engines. So, more efficient, more power, and most important of all, hopefully where you live, less tax. Let's take a closer look in the boot. Well, if you remember me mentioning from earlier, the additional 3 centimeters in length has all been absorbed within the crash protection at the front. So what you're looking at is 380 litres of load space, which is exactly the same number that the previous A3 had. As you can see, we've got a drop floor here that allows you either an extra bit of discrete storage or just a little bit more room to fit your slightly larger items in the back. That comes in pretty handy, and then when you want to load it, you can reduce the amount of entry level to get your things in. Now, of course, all of these rear seats fold down, and if you do that, there we go. I'll come right the way around the back of Thomas so we can get to the rest of it. And you can see they almost fold flat, and that gives us up to 1,200 litres of load in the rear of this car. And again, that's exactly the same as the previous A3. Once you get inside the new A3, there are 3 different trim levels to choose from. There's the base, there's the design line, and there's also the S line, which you are looking at right now. But I think it's worth pointing out that the seats which Thomas is showing you are special sports seats, so these are an optional extra. But they're not insanely expensive. You can get these for around about €350 extra. We're going to sit in them in a minute and find out if they're worth spending that money on. But I do think it's well worth pointing out before we get to that point that these seats are a mix of Alcantara in the middle and fake leather on the outside. So well done, Audi, for providing us with a sustainable option. If you want to go for the standard seating, I'm really happy to tell you that they're now being made out of recycled bottles, believe it or not. It takes 45 to make one seat, but then you can drive around feeling pretty happy about your sustainable credentials the whole time you're in it. And don't forget, if you go with one of the mild hybrids, you're going to be able to feel even more happy about it. Now, the bit that everyone's been waiting for. If you are a fan of the outgoing A3, or you just have lots of experience of driving around in one, you will be aware that there were quite a lot of design cues in that, which people either fell in love with, or maybe not so much. So a lot has happened on the interior of this car, and we're going to take a look in much closer detail. But for now, I think you can pick up an awful lot of those design cues just by looking at this door. Look how much design has gone into this. This handle, for example, that, to me, I think is a completely original approach. Look at all the angularity in this design and look at all of this mixed material usage here. There's clearly a massive amount of attention that's been paid here. I think what Audi is saying is they really want you to know, first of all, this is a significant departure from what's gone before, but also it's very particular and very styled. So from the moment you open the door on the car, you should know it's an A3. Now, obviously, when you make a bold style statement, that's not going to sit brilliantly with everyone, so I am very interested to hear what your immediate reaction to this is. Are you looking at this and thinking, yes, that's great, or are you watching this and thinking, oh, I don't know, maybe that's too much of a departure from what happened before? Write in the comments and let us know. But before then, let's take a seat in and see if that sports seat's worth paying the extra for. Well, clearly we're not going to be able to get a full impression of that until we take it out for a drive, but I can tell you, sitting here in a stationary position, it's very comfortable indeed. And the seat position in this car works with a memory setting, so you will be able to have that set up exactly the way you like it. Now, I'm 5'10" or 178 centimeters, but I do have a very long torso, so if you're looking at me and comparing for height, basically, if you're around about 6 foot or 6'1", this is the reasonable amount of space that you can get from your A3. And as you can see from my head, there's stacks of room in here. I have more than enough space to feel completely comfortable. So, driving position, really nice on the road. I sit just over the bonnet. I'm low down into the car, so my center of gravity feels good. It feels dynamic and sporty, exactly what the exterior promised me. But does that feeling follow the rest of the interior design? Let's take a closer look and find out. Well, once you start looking around the A3, my goodness, you certainly notice just how much has changed in here. If you haven't seen a previous A3, then you will have missed out on the rather obtrusive display right over the top of the dashboard. So Audi have made huge steps in terms of integrating their digital systems. As you can see, there is now a digital cockpit built straight into here, and then matching that, a digital infotainment system. Now, this is 10.1 inches from side to side, and that comes as standard right throughout every single model that you can buy on the market. This is the largest that's available, and it's 12.3 inches, but if you want to go with a smaller one, they do go down to around about 10 inches in diameter. So there is a little bit of variation here, but it shouldn't interfere with what you see in terms of the design aesthetic. Everything is much more subtle and integrated than the previous car. I think there's been a huge amount of design attention paid here to making sure that whilst you still have these very distinctive stylistic features to tell you that the car has its own unique qualities, everything is much more conservative, putting your focus and attention where you want it to be, and that obviously is right on the road in front. Now, this car in particular is loaded with optional extras, so as you can see, or you may be able to see, you can now get a head-up display baked in as well, but that is not standard. That's an option if you want to go for it. Steering wheel, well, if we're going to give credit to Audi for using recycled bottles and special new Alcantara seats, we have to give them a little bit of criticism for saying it would have been nice if we'd found something alternative to the leather-wrapped steering wheel, and that is continued as well on the gear stick mount. So it'd be nice to see some more materials coming through here as well. But in terms of how the new multi-function steering wheel sits within the car, I think you will agree it looks pretty great, and being Audi, its functionality is very straightforward and easy to use. Now, as far as the driver's systems in this car go and their integration with the infotainment system, this car has 10 times the processing power of its predecessor. So all of the systems on board are that much more slick in their application. That said, as with almost every other car, deciding what you can adjust, how you can adjust it, and where you can adjust it is always going to be just a little bit of fun. So this is a touch sensitive screen. If I go to the home, I can give you a sense of how the navigation system's working, but you can see just how fluid it is. That extra power really makes an awful lot of difference in terms of how you can interact with a car. If I want to change my driver settings, if I do that through here, you can get a sense immediately of what some of those features are. So let's go to the cockpit, and you can see we have 3 standard design layouts to choose from. Classic, and if I change that, you can see is not radically different to the Sport, which is available here. Challenge you to immediately notice the difference. But if you want something that's radically different, well, tell me what you think about that. Now, having settled on one of the first 2 options, as I suspect most people will, if you want to change the way in which the information on the digital cockpit is displayed, that happens over here on the multifunction steering wheel. We press the view, we can change between having large or smaller dials, and as you will know from previous Audis, we can have all kinds of different information displayed in the center. Again, thanks to that heightened processing power, everything works really seamlessly, and it's really nice. Now, I think it's a feature worth pointing out over here back on the infotainment system again, that if I want to, I can program this to be set up and ready for multiple different users. So up to 6 different users, and I think that's a really great feature. That said, I would obviously be an even bigger fan if they allowed me to make sure that the setup of the screen was the way I like it. It's just one of those things that people interfere with. But the heating and cooling function is great. And talking of heating and cooling, let's have a look down here. Now, this is one of the most hotly contested areas of interior design that you can possibly think of. How to integrate heating and cooling controls. After wringing their hands and arguing about it for months, Audi decided that buttons was still what people want. And I have to tell you, I agree with them. I really like the way these have been integrated, so you don't have to look at those features when you're not using them. Turn them on, turn them off. And as you can see, if you push any one of the control buttons, it will instantly turn them on. So when you're driving and enjoying your car, you don't need to think about it. You can access what you need to immediately. So hats off for that. Not so much in the way of hats off for the volume control on the stereo. Well, obviously that is a feature you can access through the multifunction steering wheel. If you don't want to do that, you can also talk to your car to give it instruction. But if you want to go old school, well, there's a slightly different method available for that. Coming slightly further down, we can see the Drive Select feature. This is the only place on which you can change the driving modes. That will adjust the steering, the handling, and the suspension. So, a useful button to know the whereabouts of. I don't know if I would have liked it a little bit more prominently placed, but it's actually pretty easy to access from the gear stick. Further down, and welcome to mobile phone world. Well, if you're big on connectivity, I think it's well worth mentioning that at launch, this car will still require a wired connection for a mobile phone if you want to use features like Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. But give it a month or so, and that should be something that can be done wirelessly. So if that's a big feature for you, it might just be worth waiting a little bit longer. In addition to which, if you can just about make out down there, I have 2 USB charge points. At the moment, that is a USB standard and a USB-C. Again, very shortly after launch, you will find that changing to 2 USB-C points. So, I don't know how important that is to you, but it is probably worth you knowing about. Then there is a nicely raked ledge, and I like the way that they've thought to do this. A lot of manufacturers just compromise on the space that they have available to put a mobile phone charge point in. This is inductive charging, so you can lay your phone down there and it will sit nice and safe for you, and it provides enough space for one of the bigger phones as well. So I think that's made a really good use of the space that's available. Now we come on to one of my less favorite features. This is, believe it or not, the audio controls. Now you can access this through the steering wheel. Those of you who are regular viewers will know I'm a big fan of old and analog. This is new and digital. As you can see, it doesn't have a lot in the way of surface area to interact with. The best description I've heard of this so far is it has most in common with a first generation iPod. So you can turn the volume up and down in much the same way you'd be familiar with. Now, I guess the reason for my negative reaction to this is, as a driver, that just doesn't work for me. Not least if I want to use it. As I found out earlier, this is precariously close to touching your passenger's knee, and that is not a territory that most of us want to get into. So I think the driver is really going to be limited to using those steering wheel controls. All of that said, it is really nice to see the passenger thought of, and obviously this is very well placed for them to be able to use. So, chances are, if you're looking at this as a passenger, you will be doing it rather a lot more favourably than I am as a driver. If there's one thing you really can say about Audi, it's that they usually put as much attention into the backseat passengers as they do into the front. And even just a first glance at the rear of this car tells you that this car is no exception to that. So, as much of the design taking place in the rear door, a really nice wide open angle to make ease of access a reality. And it looks to me as if there is plenty of room back here. Well, there you go. Again, if you're comparing me at around about 6 foot, 6'1", you can see I have plenty of available headspace here. Now, the seat's quite far forwards because it's adjusted for me, but even taking that into account, absolutely masses of legroom back here. Now, it's also worth mentioning that although we never gained the benefit of that additional 3 centimeters in length at the front, you really do notice it for width. So there's much more available shoulder width than there is in the predecessor. Now, I know 3 centimeters is not a whole lot of room, but the impact upon your comfort as a rear seat passenger is immediate and noticeable. Back here, the attention to detail and the quality of materials is everything that you would expect from the front. It's really nicely finished, and there are options available for rear seat passengers too. There are 2 USB-C charge points down here, but I do think it's worth pointing out that, like many other things, those are an option. So you can rack up those bills in the configurator pretty briskly, but at least they are available to choose if that's what you're after. We've been joined by Philip Romers, and he is the man responsible for the exterior design of the new A3. Now, Philip, the first thing I have to say to you is, a car that's sold 50 million units, that's got to make you a little nervous when you're addressing a redesign.
Yeah, I have to say the A3 is a quite popular product, and it was the first car which was a premium compact car at this time. And still, the current A3 is a quite good product itself. It offers a lot of good functionality, the cabin is big enough, it drives very well, has a nice interior, but we thought there's time to improve. And actually what were the main topics were actually to make the car more sporty and more striking. So we had to create a quite bold, characterful design.
So how do you do that without alienating the customers who like the design already?
No, actually for us it was important that you can clearly see it's still an A3, but you also have to see it's the next A3, it's a new generation. And actually what we did is the second and also the third generation Sportback of the A3 was always supposed to be a shortened Avant. And we said this time we want to change a little bit the character. We wanted to do the car more like a sporty hot hatch. So we shortened at least a little bit the rear overhang and made the seat post more prominent. And this gives the car a new proportion, which is very well balanced because the front overhang is slightly longer, the rear overhang is a little bit shorter. This gives a lot of tension in the side profile, and this makes the car already quite sporty from the proportion. And then what I was talking about was a striking body side theme, and I think we found something very characterful. Actually, as you can see here, we have a shoulder which is running around the whole car, which is very prominent. This is for us also a little bit the link to the first generation A3. Also the first generation had a shoulder running around the whole car. This made the car look like a premium car also. But this shoulder was quite soft. And this time we said, of course, we have to make it very striking, very, very sharp. And then there comes a rule break. Actually, this surface here is almost negative. And normally this is a no-go in the automotive design industry because the car is not standing well on the wheels. But we thought we use the quattro elements on top of all 4 wheels to give the car the proper stance. And the car the A3 is available also as a quattro. So it makes totally sense also on the A3 to emphasize our quattro technology. Yeah, and in general, I would say this is a very striking and characterful body side theme, which is extremely three-dimensional. And I'm looking forward to see it outside moving, because I think this will look quite interesting outside.
One of the interesting things to me in particular about the way that the design aesthetic plays with the overall appearance of the car, as you say, that negative space, but in particular the way that the light interplays with it. It creates levels in the visual aesthetic that you're just not used to seeing in the way that the car presents. And that throws you slightly emotionally. You're not quite sure how to interact with it, but it gives you a little extra dynamism. And you think, oh, I don't know what this is, but I think I'm going to like it.
Yeah, that's the point. Yeah.
So come on.
I think it's a good combination between really this shoulder, this really says premium, I'm a premium compact car, but this modulation here in the lower part really makes it then very characterful in the same time and very sporty.
So you spent many hours working on this car, and as we all know, the design of anything connected to a vehicle is always a compromise between what you ideally want and what you have to compromise on because of regulations or brand requirements. What features did you really fight for here that you're really excited about and you really love, you're really proud of?
Yeah, actually I can tell you, I think the body side is so extreme because this point is so far in, and this was quite also for our engineers quite a tough topic to make this work, because of course there are all the barrels inside. We wanted to offer also interior space in the same time, and we created this very extreme section. So this is actually what I like most about the new A3.
I have to ask you, and I know it's going to be a silly question, but when I look at the rear profile of that, there's something very reminiscent. If I say the chisel line on the Q2, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is there any reference that, I know it's different, it's very different in styling, but is there any similar reference point in terms of keeping the consistency throughout the brand?
No, but both are Audi design, of course, and I have to say also the Q2 is a quite characterful car. And so to see features like this, which give a lot of character to a car, why not? It's an Audi.
Well, I think that more or less says it all. So come on, I'm going to need you to be honest with me. I've always asked this of designers. Which size of wheel do we have to have for this car?
19.
Ah, come on. Well, there you go. You can't argue with the man that designed it. So send him the bill. Maybe he's going to help you out with that a little bit. But I can only say congratulations. I think what you've achieved here is really, really difficult because it gives something so new and so fresh visually to the appearance and the aesthetic, but it's still an A3. And I think this
was a task.
Absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, that about does it for us from our sneak peek behind the scenes at the brand new A3 Sportback. So, what about pricing? Well, if you're looking at base models, they start at 26,800. This is for Germany, and they go up to around about 34,900. That's entry price depending on trim level. Of course, once you start adding options and you start looking at the different things available, that price can go up pretty briskly from there. But I think it's fair to say you can get more or less what you want if you factor in around about an extra 5,000's worth of spend. Clearly, 3,000 just for wheels is not going to be everybody's order of business. But you know, it absolutely will be some people's, so it's nice that they're there. On the other hand, do you really like Matrix LED enough to justify 1,500 spend on them? Well, some people will. They are, after all, a very nice feature. But for my money, I'm going to use that cash for things like the driver assistance systems, which again, thanks to that additional bump in processing speed, really are likely to be working extremely well with this car. So, it's so often the case with Audi. You say, yes, what a great product. And then you look to pricing and you say, but is it delivering a price point? Well, I think the nice thing about Audi is that it doesn't make any apologies at all for being the price that it is. That's not to say that it isn't very important to Audi to represent strong value for money, but it is to say that they are very keen to present the cars that they want. And they cost what they cost. So if you're making a very price-conscious purchasing decision, Audi may not necessarily be the first pick for you. But if you want a car that represents exactly what you want, you will be able to find it within the configurator at Audi. For my taste, I think this car represents a huge step forward stylistically over the predecessor. I love the interior redesign. It's much more in keeping with what I expect from an Audi, and the exterior promises all kinds of driving fun to be had. Of course, we're going to have to wait just a little bit longer to find out how well it delivers on those promises. But if what we've seen so far is anything to go by, then I'm more than a bit excited to find out. Guys, if you have any comments or questions, please pop them below. Thank you so much for watching, and we hope we'll see you all again soon.
We here on Autogefühl tell you all about you need to know about the VW Golf GTI in the 8th generation. This all-new Golf generation has the famous sporty trim, red and sporty, and everything you need to know in exterior, interior, and let's say the prospect of the driving experience. And we also compare the new GTE and the GTD. And now join us, Thomas in front of the camera, Holger behind, in full HD, full screen, and full length. Let's go. In the front, the all-new Golf generation has the different shape of the headlamps. That's the main characteristic, and also stronger hood here, but in general a rather evolutionary change. Then the GTI model here, you can see, has this red stripe that goes all around the front, also into the headlamps, and below that, that's really cool, is the daytime running light. That's not only here but also in the middle part here. That's really fancy, and it's also working while driving indeed. Pretty cool. Then lower part with a honeycomb structure grille, pretty massive. Fog lamps on the outside, which is an option, and in general a bigger spoiler right there. So overall a pretty big stance on the road already for the, let's say, base GTI model. And the headlamp unit, standard now LED for all Golf, and optional matrix LED then for the main headlamp for more high beam function. Well, and why this perspective? I want to talk about the front differential lock. In this case here, standard GTI gets an electronic front differential lock because all the power is going to the front wheels, and then on an electronic basis the wheels are also controlled that you can go out of the corner a little bit better. Maybe there will be a version, like a very sportier GTI version with the mechanical differential lock once again. We'll see about that later. 4.28 meters, 14'4", or 168 inches is the length here of the new Golf generation. And this is more or less the same in length than before. You know, a difference inside the corporation competition is that Seat Leon and Skoda Octavia both now share the longer wheelbase, whereas the Golf is rather shorter wheelbase. Well, for the GTI it's actually good to give it more agility. The GTI comes with a standard suspension, minus 15 millimeters lower, and then optional you can also go for the DCC, dynamic chassis control, the adaptive suspension, as you also already know from the previous generation. Here the GTI comes with a special GTI badge, then starts with 17-inch wheels. These are the optional 18-inch wheels, and optional you can also go for 19. Red brake calipers as a contrast, and here of course very cool fitting to this so-called King's Red metallic color. And towards the rear part we have this additional integrated wing. It's still quite elegant, and you see the main design line is here, dividing light and shadow at the height of the door handles. In the rear I really have to say, wow, I mean this is a base GTI so to say, and it gets this very strong lower spoiler and two pipes, and they're really separated in this GTI here and actually pretty massive. so you don't need like an additional sports exhaust or something. Then new tail lamps here as well, they look very modern, and you get this retro VW logo. Together also you see the GTI lettering has a little bit changed, you know, in this in the style. What do you think? Do you like it? Overall, I think when you just look at it as a works GTI or something, you can get it. It has still this elegant look, but definitely a stronger stance than before, especially here in the rear. And now about the engine, a 2-liter 4-cylinder with 245 horsepower, turbocharged of course, and so the horsepower figure is about the one that you had before with the GTI Performance, now in the base GTI. And of course all the power via the front wheels. And yeah, we talked about it in the initial Golf 8 review already. No hydraulic struts anymore, same here also for the GTI. The question is, I mean, we as car enthusiasts, we really like to have hydraulic struts, and it was like a characteristic of the Golf 8. The question is like, how many customers overall will open the hood? And I mean, how important is it really? And I mean, is the percentage of people that is really not caring about that higher than those who care? I don't know. I just know for a GTI especially, it would have been better with hydraulic struts. And now comparing the GTE exterior, the plug-in hybrid. This one here has a scheme in blue, so you have the contrasting stripe here in blue and the GTE lettering in blue. And again, you see this beautiful LED exterior ambient light, so to say, that goes all around the vehicle. Other than that, the lower part is also the same. In this case, we also have 18-inch wheels mounted. And in the rear, the difference is, here for the GTE, this one does not have a real exhaust pipe that is visible. Of course, it still has an exhaust because there's a combustion in the inside, but you rather have, I mean, is it fake exhaust? We can argue about that. It's, let's say, a fake exhaust graphic or something. Now the GTE engine concept. This is a 1.4-liter TSI, so it's a turbo petrol engine, but with a little bit less displacement. But same horsepower figure, 245 horsepower, because you have the additional electric motor and the 13 kilowatt-hour battery, so stronger than or more capacity than before in the previous generation. You see all the orange parts belong to the electric drive, and on the left side then the combustion engine, but also all front-wheel drive. And exterior on the GTD, the turbo diesel. This one does not have a contrasting color here, just a silver stripe. And again, you can see when it doesn't have a contrasting color, you can see more of this LED lighting, I think. As for the color, I mean, if it's like red, white or gray, this can be, of course, bought for every version, but we have a little bit more variety. Also in the comp style structure, the honeycomb style structure grille in lower part, you can see here we do not have the fog lights, whereas our GTI and the GTE did have the fog lamps. This GTD here looks, by the way, most impressive of the lineup today because it has bigger wheels, 19-inch, the maximum wheel size here, and also because of this dark gray color, so this makes it, over the strongest appearance. And interesting also that in contrast to the GTI, where the big pipes are basically split left and right, here there's dual exhaust just on the left side. And the GTD comes with a 2-liter TDI, a turbo diesel, here with 200 horsepower, so less horsepower than GTI and GTE, but we already know that the diesel usually have more torque. So, after all, acceleration figures are not out yet. We'll present that to you on a later stage, latest at the driving parts, for example, when we do the reviews. They all, come close definitely, but the GTI petrol will be the fastest. Golf car key is pretty slim and also has this capacitive button style, so to say. And you also have keyless entry, put your hand on the outside to close it. Then also the side mirrors flip in and they also go up. So it's really cool and, very even. When you put your hand on the inside of the door handle, then of course the mirrors also flip out again. You also have this hole in here for the standard key. I'm not sure why they did it in that way, probably to save a part that you can, that you don't have to pull it apart. When it's all closed, you have to actually pull the whole part out when you then want to use the manual function. So that's the way it opens, and that's of course cool, a nice solid door closing sound. That's still the same with the Golf, and in the front the inside of the doors are still with a soft touch as well. Reasonable space at the inside of the doors here for the door pockets, so you can put a lot of even bigger stuff there, no doubt. And then there's this honeycomb scheme also here at the decor elements, and we'll find it all over the interior. Well, digitalization is the scheme of the new Golf 8. Then there are digital instruments, comes standard now for all Golf versions, 10.25 inch. The GTI gets the special steering wheel with perfect structures at the side and GTI badge with the red contrast below. Left side you control the cruise control. You can also get an adaptive cruise control optional. Right side then to control the digital instruments. And the seats are really very special. First of all, you have typical Golf GTI checkered structure, or sometimes also called scale paper. Caro it would be in German, and really beautifully done, and it's good to have the fabric surface because it stays cool in summer and warm in winter times, and also that you don't slide around that much. Inside then with some Alcantara inserts, microfiber, really cool, and integrated head restraint already, so it looks really fancy. We'll soon test, of course, if it's also not only fancy looking but also fancy in the comfort, so to say. And let's get inside. By the way, you also have aluminum pedals, as it should be for Golf GTI. Manual seat control here. You can also pump it up, y'all. But I put it in the lowest position because me with 1m86 or 6'1", still have a decent headroom left. Back part can be controlled like this, and this is a really very comfortable seating position. So some sport seats bring you less comfort. I mean, there are special ergo comfort seats also for the new Golf. These were really good. We had them in earlier review as well, but they also make a good impression here so far. You have more shoulder support, and in a way that's also good for your lower back, because then there's less weight on the lower back, for example. Steering wheel can be controlled in and out, up and down, and so on, so you can find a good seating position. It's not too different than the one from the previous generation. The seats are indeed different. That's, I think, the main characteristic. And of course, when you look to the front, that you have this screen setup. By the way, the materials here on top of the dashboard, they are also soft touch. Now the interior overview. What's really cool is here the ambient light, then also the GTI red here between, and again this honeycomb structure right there also as a decor element. The standard Golf would come with an 8-inch infotainment screen. This one here, the optional 10-inch screen. So also with the red GTI background in this case, soon more details to that. You can see here no physical climate knobs, all runs here with the sliders. I don't like that. I want to have physical knobs for this one. There are some hotkeys in the lower part. Then the steering wheel with a very good grip, promises a lot of driving fun. Heated steering wheel function will also be available. And you have a special GTI view, soon more details to this digital screen there too. Other than that, you have 2 USB-C chargers in the lower part, a lot of space for your phone, also with inductive charging pad. Then there's a new DSG shifting lever, dual clutch transmission, which is room saving, and also from reverse to D and back, this will be going easier and better because it's shift by wire, no mechanical link anymore. The engine start-stop button is pumping like a heartbeat. That's also a special feature for the GTI. And then you have cup holder area. You can play around with that a little bit, have an adaptive cup holder or just a little bit more space. And last but not least, this armrest which you can put up, and then you have some more storage underneath. Well, we have the dual clutch transmission DSG here, which is pretty room saving and so on, and looks quite fancy and very modern and good for the integration in the cockpit. But it's a GTI. What about the manual gearbox? Yes, I can confirm the GTI will still be available with the manual gearbox. So either the 7-speed DSG or then the manual gearbox for more purist driving fun. will not be available for GTD and of course not for the GTE because of the hybrid integration, but the GTI will still be offered with the manual. And these are the special digital instruments in the GTI style, and you can actually then decide what you want to have left or right, for example navigation, or you want some like other information left or right, so you can pick that actually what you want to have, or if you just want to have it clear. And what's very interesting, when I control it here with the thumb, first of all, you can slide like this and something's being doing in the menu, so that's possible, but you can also click it and then it also gives a haptical feedback that you can even listen to. Now more details to the infotainment system. So you have different main menus here, for example, with the GPS. You can slide one more, then you have, for example, the consumption meter and so on. And you know, the icon view here, to me that looks a little bit old school, doesn't it? Telephone either via Bluetooth or Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. CarPlay is also available in a wireless way. At the moment I have the cable set. The GPS looks like this, can also be increased over the whole screen, and the GPS software the Volkswagen company is usually pretty good and also leads the way. Everything's really clear and crisp, but the white accentuations here, to me, a little bit too bright. You can, however, also adjust the colors of the whole system right here. CarPlay integration looks like this. This is using pretty much of the screen. 10-speaker optional Harman Kardon system is giving a very crisp and clear sound. I like that. It's really, you know, intense. Pretty cool. And then you can see here the audio. You slide either or click, so both is possible. But again, no physical button, and that's what I dislike. In the same way, also the climate unit works here. By the way, it's off at the moment because the car is off. But the same way, you either click it or slide it. So, I don't know. That's actually what I think is not really a step forward. So, and you can also click this one, by the way, to here to get to the climate unit right there. And then you have either smart climates, for example, warm hands, cool my feet. This is an interesting idea to offer these climate programs, but you can also program it in a classic way, for example. And then seat heating would be activated right here. But again, I think that's too complicated, especially while driving. However, you can also use the voice command with "Hello Volkswagen." Hello Volkswagen.
What can I do for you?
Increase temperature.
This function is currently unavailable.
You see, because the car is off, but she actually recognized that I gave the right command, so that would work. Or, for example, you can also press the voice button in the steering wheel. Drive me to Berlin. Let's see if that works.
Please say the full address, starting with the city.
Okay, that should have worked a little bit better. So I feel still that the Mercedes and BMW natural voice input is a little bit ahead of this one still. Now to the rear. You can see here the checkered structure in the red contrasting is also for the rear seats. Looks nice and sporty. This is really a very good materials they use. However, here at the inside of the doors, on the back part, that is now hard pack, sadly. So that's the second floor next to the missing hydraulic struts. Again, they really save millions of money, probably with these cost savings. And they say, yeah, you know, most customers won't really care. Well, we care here as car enthusiasts, but I can also understand the decision from the economical standpoint. Sitting in the rear is also actually quite cozy, and I mean standard compact segment alike. Also fits here with my knees when I have the seat as I would be in the front. There are some pockets here at the back part of the seat. It is a quite voluminous sport seat. Also, you can see the red accentuations here, for example. But again, considering it's voluminous, you still can comfortably sit here also as a tall adult in the rear. So I would be happy with that. Headroom is like this. If you want more legroom, then you would need to go to the Skoda Octavia, for example, or the Seat Leon. Seat Leon will also be available as Cupra version, then competing with this one, but well, rather with the Golf R, depending on the exact Cupra version. Then you flip the seats already from here, as we know from a generation season before, always thinking like, in series season, so on. Then there are the Isofix at the outside parts, and cup holders here, but they are non-adaptive whatsoever. Ski hatch for the middle part to load things through. And in the middle console, you also even have a heated seating and a separate climate unit, optional of course. And below, 2 USB-C chargers. For opening the trunk, you still have this nice logo flip right there. And then there are some standard square dimensions, so to say. There's a little bit more space underneath. In this case, also for the sound equipment, but you can also fit a spare tire. Here we go. And you can actually flip the seats from here if you reach over like this, and that from the rear compartment. So that's how it looks like. And if we take some measurements, again, hasn't changed from the previous generation. This is here 67 centimeters in length. We'll have about a meter in width, and the height to the top cover is about 42 centimeters. And when we then measure everything up to my driving seat, as I was sitting in the car, this one then is 1 meters and 50. Last but not least, we could either use the ski hatch for the middle part or flip that one for the maximum setup. Let's take a short look at the GTE interior. It's almost the same as in the GTI, also comes with the same equipment, but then again the digital instruments, for example, have a GTE badge and also a blue scheme, also a blue inlet at the steering wheel with a GTE logo, and the seats, they are with the same base structure in the checkered or scale paper structure, but then have the blue contrast and also some blue contrast stitches around. To me, the most beautiful, because blue is my favorite color, so I would really pick the GTE as for the interior styling. Of course, mainly the choice is between which engine you pick. So really almost same features, exterior and interior, and also what you get as standard equipment, what's optional. Most is the same for GTI, GTE and GTD. It's really about the color nuances. And of course, the engine choice, as we talked about earlier. Here, a rather blue screen setup here, for example, for the instruments, and the seats with gray nuances. So you have the same structure in this checkered structure or the scale paper structure, but then in gray with the same very nice sport seats with the integrated head restraint. So what's your favorite interior-wise for today? GTI, GTE or GTD? And now to our conclusion for today with the all-new VW Golf GTI and the siblings, the GTE and the GTD. Well, in general, the rather evolutionary change of the base Golf is here a little bit different with the GTI. The new GTI looks actually stronger than before with a front design and, of course, this daytime running light. This is something with really fancy in the front right there. And I think also that the rear, with the spoiler and with the big exhaust, that looks almost as a top sporty GTI version before, now in the base GTI, so pretty fancy as for that. The interior, more has been done there, especially as for digitalization. You can argue if the whole buttonless concept is really good for the user. We talked about it in general Golf 8 review already, so mixed feelings about that, but you of course get more features, that's cool. Also more elaborate software systems and so on, natural voice input and so on. Cool also with the seats here with the integrated head restraint. They are really fancy and comfortable at the same time. And I would actually say, you can pick a Golf GTI just as it comes from works without any optional extras. Yeah, maybe the 18-inch wheels look, of course, cooler than. But basically, you can go for a base GTI and you already get a full package, and that's it. So, really like the new GTI here. What's your opinion on that? And of course, we took a look at the GTE and the GTD, all with their different color schemes. Of course, the main difference is then the engine concept. Which one do you prefer? Can you maybe charge with the GTE at home? And of course, as for the taxation, especially in Germany, the GTE is more attractive now. So together with the bigger battery, there will be more GTE sales than before. Or then again, you can still go for the diesels. As for the color, you can pick any color for every vehicle, so that's really not the thing. But we could also show different colors than today, so you should not rate like which one you pick by the exact color shown today. More like which engine would you prefer, GTE, GTI or GTD? And from the whole styling, here more with the red, GTE more with the blue, GTD then rather with this gray contrast, or let's say non-contrast. Which one is your favorite, exterior and interior? Let's discuss this in the comments, and I hope that you also tune in when we drive one of these three, or maybe all three together. We'll see you there.
Hi, I'm Brian. Welcome to Autogefühl. We've come to Prague to show you a behind-the-scenes look at the brand new Skoda Octavia RS IV. So what's the IV? Well, it's a little bit confusing here, specifically because this is the 4th generation of Octavia, and because of that, obviously IV in Roman numerals would make sense, but don't be fooled. IV is a designator for Skoda that stands for Intelligent or Innovative Vehicle. So, what is the RS IV? Well, it is the first full hybrid for the RS lineup, so that should be a big, significant change. Is it any good? Let's take a closer look and find out. .83 or 72 inches in width. This Skoda Octavia is about 1.5 centimeters, and that's about the width of your thumb, wider than its predecessor. So that styling already makes the car quite visually present on the road, but when you combine that with a new RS design, what you have is a lot more dynamic. Now, the big story with the new Octavia is its wind drag coefficient. So the standard sedan comes in at just 0.24, the Estate at 0.26. So that explains a lot of the dimensions and the presentation of the car. With the RS design, of course, with the history of the RS, making it look as sporty and as dynamic as possible is the goal here. So we lose the chrome round this front grille and replace it with black matte effect. And again, if you look at the bottom, instead of where on the standard Octavia you have a silver bar that slightly splits up that visual height, here we just have a black mass coming through into the side. Very large fake air intakes that really do give the car a very striking visual presence. I especially like the way that these LED lamps go straight into this grille now. I thought that looked pretty good on the Octavia, but here where you take away that trim, I think it looks like one solid piece and really does look quite dynamic. 4 meters 70 or 185 inches in length. From the side, the Octavia RS really takes on a bit of a life of its own. Now, this is the first place that you can really see the impact that the new powertrain has on the design of this car. Why? Well, traditionally, RS design uses dynamic suspension that lowers the ride height, usually by around about 15 millimeters, which is around about the width of your thumb. On this car, however, the ride height is exactly the same as a standard Octavia, and the reason for that is because, of course, it has batteries underneath that need to be protected. So, no difference in height for this car from the standard Octavia, but a couple of different design features. Let's start at the front here. You can see that there are black door mirrors, and I really like the way that those have been paired on this car with these black roof rails coming right through back here into this black spoiler. Now, this is worth talking about. The reason for this is that ordinarily, if you buy the Octavia RS, you'll find that the rear spoiler on the Estate is matched to the body color of the rest of the car. If you buy the sedan, the spoiler at the rear is in black. Well, here, as you can see, it's in black, and I think it goes really nicely indeed. So I'm very keen to see if Skoda will add this as an optional extra later on. Slightly lower down the car, you can see the wheels. Standardly, these are going to come as 18 inches, but on the car that we have here today, they are the optional extra 19. Once you get round to the back, things start to get really controversial. Now, I was really interested when we did the Octavia review just how many people were happy with that design, that it did not feature fake exhausts. So, what do you think about that? Well, it's difficult, isn't it? If you're going to produce something that wants to be a bit more sporty, you do need to make some type of a statement with the exhausts. But this one always really divides the audience. Tell me what you think. Well, that's not the only RS-specific detail on the rear. Other than this spoiler, which we already talked about, we also have the RS logo back here. And we have these black accent points. Let me show you over here. That way Thomas can look at it more easily. These are distinct, separate and different from the standard Octavia. I think they work really well. You know what? I think I could probably live with those. But what do you think? This being the hybrid model, it does, of course, have a smaller fuel tank. So 40 litres is what the petrol tank holds. This is, of course, where you can charge the car's batteries. Well, it's always nice to see where attention to detail has been applied. And I can't be the only person in the world who is delighted to see the inclusion of these gas struts. And I think you might want to take advantage of them to spend a good amount of time staring under this hood. There is a lot to unpack here. What you are looking at is a 1.4 litre TSI petrol engine that produces 150 horsepower, and it has been twinned with an electric that features a 13 kilowatt hour battery powering an 85 kilowatt electric motor. That gives you a total system output of 245 horsepower and 400 newton meters of torque. That's all going to be paired with a 6-speed DSG gearbox. Because of the electric motors, that actually has 3 different clutches. That will give you a 0 to 100 time of 7.3 seconds and a top speed of 225 kilometers per hour. Good grief. So, does all of that look and sound really scarily complicated? Well, there is an awful lot happening in here. But as with the drag coefficient of the new Octavias, I think the really exciting thing to get interested in is the fact that this will give you, hopefully, the most efficient drive you're able to get in an RS. It's the first time this system has been introduced in this way, the first time it's been used, and I think it's going to be really exciting to see how it performs. Just out of interest, there will be 4 electric Octavias on offer. There's this one. There will also be a hybrid, an IV model for the standard Octavia lineup, and 2 mild hybrids as well. No news yet on a fully electric platform, but you know what? It wouldn't surprise me if that came a little bit later on. Let's take a look in the back and see what's going on. Well, you know what? Every time I look in the rear of one of these, I have to pinch myself just to remember that this is based on the same platform as the Golf. What you are looking at is 640 litres of load space. And if that sounds like a lot, it's because it is. That's 30 litres more than the car that went before. And this is the estate. If you get the coupe version, you can still have 600 litres of load in the back. So really, this is not the largest car that Skoda make within this sector. Obviously, you can have a Superb, and that's bigger still. But I really would have to think quite long and hard about what it was I needed to fit in the back of anything that won't go in the back of here, especially when I fold these seats down. Now, we're a little bit tight for time, so I'm just going to put one down so you can see it nearly goes all the way flat, and this will now provide you with all of the seats fully flat, 1,740 litres of load space. I think that's pretty impressive. Let's take a closer look inside the car to see what's changed here. Well, if you haven't yet had the opportunity to look at either my or Thomas's take on the brand new Octavia, it's well worthwhile giving those a quick look to get a feel for how the overall lineup ties in together. But as it relates to the styling here, well, I think everything about the RS speaks to it being more dynamic and more sporty, and you can see that right from the get-go of opening up the door. If you have a look at the door panel itself, there's a really nice inlaying of Alcantara here that just softens up the hard plastic on the speaker grille. So a nice mix and balance of materials, nicely set off by this new door handle. The seats here have been really nicely designed. These are the standard cloth ones that come with the RS, but there are available all Alcantara seats which you can have as an optional extra. Well, Once you take a seat in the car, it delivers all the comfort and driving experience that you would expect. The driving position is really good. I'm really finding more and more that as cars go through their latest generations now, driving position just keeps getting better. I think that's in large part because the data that comes back to the manufacturers improves and deepens over time, so they have a much easier job, I say easier, of making car geometry work for people with massively different shapes and sizes. And I say that because I'm a person who has particularly short legs, but a particularly long torso. I'm 5 feet 10 or 178 centimeters, and as you can see, I have stacks of room above my head. So very pleasing indeed. Overall, the cockpit design is quite familiar if you've seen the new Octavia, but if you haven't, I think it's fair to say that it's quite a departure from what's gone before. So Thomas is just going to pop round to the back so we can get a different view and show you a little bit about what's happening up here. If you haven't seen the latest Octavia, I think what's going to come as the biggest shock to you is how much of the redesign has carried on through into the interior from the exterior styling. I think the word that ties all of this together is minimalism. Yes, you still have a standalone screen here, but it's been integrated in the least obtrusive way I think that you could do it. What's changed with the RS presentation is that it's now been made significantly more sporty. Look at this Alcantara feature here on the dashboard, and look at how well that works with this carbon fiber effect ledge. I particularly like when they put ledges in for using screens, because when you're driving, it just makes it that much easier to access what you need without needing to pay that much attention. These two screens here are 10 inches apiece, both the driver's display and the infotainment system. That's the way the car should standardly come, but and I'm not sure if they're going to continue this through into the RS as well. If you want to go with a standard Octavia, you can still get it with analog dials. So they might give you a slightly funny look if you order an RS version with them. I don't even know if they'll let you, but you know what? I think that's still nice to be able to get as an option. Everything else here has been kept clean, minimalistic, and stylish. It feels modern, comfortable, and very driver-focused. Brand new for the 4th generation of Octavia is this steering wheel. Really nicely delivered, as with the seat. You get the feeling that an awful lot of driver feedback has been put into making sure these controls are very well placed. If, by the way, you're wondering why our placement of this wheel is slightly unusual, that's because we're in a photography studio, so therefore the car is on rollers, and unfortunately the steering is currently locked. It is attention to detail. We like to have it the right way around, just to let any obsessive viewers know why it looks that way. Coming slightly further down, you can still see that continued feeling of minimalism coming through here to the gear selector. This is drive-by-wire, so it's only an electronic connection. I like the way that there's really nothing here that doesn't need to be here, and even the phone storage area here is very minimalistic, but still has nice deep ridges to keep your phone where it's supposed to be, and two very discreetly placed USB-C charging ports. Let's take a look in the back. Well, the big story, and I mean that quite literally, in the rear of the new Octavia is the additional legroom. There's an unbelievable extra 8 centimeters back here, or 3 inches, which is about that. So you can see there is absolutely stacks of space. But it's not only that that makes things nice back here. The styling's been continued straight through from the front, so the same use of materials, the same dynamic feel. I guess for some people you could say it's a little dark back here, but I don't know why you'd be buying an RS if that kind of thing doesn't appeal to you anyway. Attention to detail's really nice back here too. As you can see, there's a rear seat pocket exactly as you'd expect, but look at this. There's also a secondary pocket into which you can tuck your mobile phone for charging, keeping it out of your way, and you can plug it into one of the conveniently placed USB charge ports right at the back of the central console. That just about brings us to the end of our very brief look at the Skoda Octavia RS IV. Well, for me, it's all about the numbers, and those are the numbers that we have and the numbers that we don't. Currently, we don't have pricing yet on this model, but I think if you look at comparative pricing for the previous generation, you shouldn't be looking at a massive uplift. The key thing with Skoda and their offerings are they really do go to an awful lot of trouble to make sure that really whatever you want in whatever combination, whatever level of affordability is something you can get to. The RS is a slightly different animal. They aim to very well equip this car from the get-go, which is why when you just take a blank look at pricing, it can look like it's a very significant uplift on the base model entry price. But don't forget, if you were buying a standard Octavia, you would be more than likely to equip that. This is a very popular car. In Germany, 1 in every 5 Octavias that Skoda sell is an RS. So there's a big expectation on this car. It's interesting to me to think that standardly when you think RS, your first thoughts are all about performance. Your first thought with this car, a hybrid, brand new within the lineup, is going to be about efficiency and performance. So we're going to have to wait a little frustratingly longer in order to find out how well that delivers once you get it out on the road. There is certainly an awful lot of technology here, but also an awful lot of promise. I do miss the little bit of ride height adjustment slightly, but I hope I would be too busy enjoying driving everywhere on pure electric to really let that bother me particularly. Yes, I know, fake exhaust, not everybody's cup of tea, but I like the way that they've gone to quite a lot of effort to put those in as discreetly as they can while still having them there for the people who like them. This then represents a bold statement in the future of the RS. Now, don't worry if you're a traditionalist. There will be a petrol and a diesel model following this up hot on its heels. We don't yet have the details of them, but don't worry, we will tell you all about them as soon as we do. Until then, I hope you've enjoyed taking a quick look behind the scenes at this car. If it drives as well as it looks, then I think it could be a really big plus to the lineup. That's it from us for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any comments or questions, please pop them below. Please subscribe, and we hope we'll see you again soon.
This is the BMW i4. Here still as a concept, but it's said to be that it shouldn't be that far from reality. The i4 is, so to say, the electric BMW 4 Series Grand Coupe, built on the 3 Series platform. Production will start in 2021 in Munich for this Tesla Model 3 competitor. So whereas Volkswagen goes from integrated EV building style to a whole separate platform for EVs, BMW goes from separate electric vehicles to an integrated assembly line where they use the same platform for combustion engines, plug-in hybrids and electric vehicles. Yes, it's about the number of vehicles that we will build on one platform. That's why it probably makes sense for the whole VW group, but not for a premium manufacturer like BMW. Nevertheless, interesting strategy changes. 90% of the assembly line will stay the same as for the 3 Series. For the 10% rest, which mainly concerns the back part of that i4, they need to invest some 200 million euros for the Munich head plant. Let's take a closer look at the BMW i4. What can we expect? BMW even says that some exterior and interior elements will not only be used in the i4, but also in other upcoming BMW electric vehicles. In the front, this double kidney has grown in vertical size this time. That seems to be one of the next BMW design trends. The kidney is also closed for better aerodynamics. The sensors for the assistance systems are hidden then behind it. The headlamps are slim, the hood very sculptural. In the side profile, we first of all see a long wheelbase, as well as this slightly falling roofline and the aerodynamic wheels. Interesting that we also see a panoramic roof that goes all over the vehicle. The exterior color is called Frozen Light Copper, by the way, and the blue contrasts, for example also in the rear bumper, shall remind of the BMW i project. And here come the numbers. BMW promises a range of 600 kilometers or 370 miles from an 80 kWh battery that adds 550 kilograms or 1,200 pounds of weight. Well, that's totally normal, and meanwhile we know that weight does not affect the efficiency of electric vehicles that much, since you can use recuperation. And that's also the reason why the BMW i project with the extremely expensive carbon fiber use was not economically useful, and they now skip that approach. Back to the BMW i4. Power-wise, it shall be 530 horsepower, which would be V8-alike and an acceleration figure of about 4 seconds. 200 km an hour or 125 miles per hour will be the top speed. Well, not sure if that is all 100% realistic for the final version in this segment, but let's see. That might be the top of the line performance model, whereas they will offer a cheaper entry model at the same time later, than with a smaller battery, less horsepower figure and so on. The interior mainly consists of this one curved display that is actually split in two screens. The instrument screen will be the very same in the series production model, BMW says, and the software is an outlook for the next generation BMW operating systems. Most functions are now integrated into the screens. However, you still have the lower control unit, but the gear selector is shallow and integrated. The steering wheel has this inward-going sporty design. As for the seat, BMW uses a mix of fabric and animal skin and claims it would be sustainable. That's of course nonsense. In the BMW Vision i Next, they were still consistent and didn't use any animal material. Well, they all laughed at Elon Musk when he first started building electric cars. But then they laughed at him again when animal leather was banned from the seats already in 2017. They will probably notice Tesla is right when customers won't buy their traditional cars anymore because they have a more animal-friendly alternative at the same time. The Mercedes electric S-Class concept recently had a vegan interior because collaboration partner James Cameron and Mercedes superstar Lewis Hamilton demanded it. Seems like BMW needs someone like this to push them. As for sound design, check out our special feature with movie composer Hans Zimmer, who designed the sounds for this EV. The space that is offered in the interior is supposed to be quite abundant thanks to the long wheelbase and the slim glass roof. We can also see an extended use of ambient lighting. That looks fancy. So what do you think about the future of BMW? They now claim that electrification reached the core of its brand, building an electric vehicle that is on the 3 Series platform. So, first approach to this one in this respect? Tell us your comments. This is the new VW Touareg R, the sporty version of that SUV that directly comes as plug-in hybrid. Let's take a look at the details. For quite a while now we have been expecting the plug-in hybrid version of the most recent Touareg generation. Now Volkswagen R, the performance daughter company of VW, reveals it as the Touareg R. By the way, also with the new R logo. Do you like it or do you prefer the old one? To be honest, I do prefer the old logo with the simple, strong R lettering. Just remember, that's the old one. The new one looks like a loop symbol with a slash underneath or something. Or am I missing a sense of art? The VW Touareg R is so to say top of the line or top spec. So it directly receives the otherwise optional LED matrix headlamps. It also comes with a black design package with stronger bumpers and dark accentuations. That black style design pack you can also get for other Touareg however. 20-inch are standard for the Touareg R, option you can go for 21 or 22-inch wheels. The R exterior pack overall includes R-style bumpers in vehicle color, air intakes with black fins, black frames around the window and some R logos all over the place. The LED rear lights are tinted. You also receive widened wheel arches in vehicle color and trapeze-style exhaust pipes. The color is well known for Volkswagen R and is called Lapis Blue Metallic. As you have already seen, we have also some nice drifting shots from the snow. That works because the classic permanent all-wheel drive system is rear-wheel biased. As for engines, the Touareg R comes with the known V6 turbo petrol engine with 340 horsepower plus 136 horsepower from an electric motor, making a system output of 462 horsepower. Wait, you are so fast and diligent in calculation skills that you realize that doesn't add up correctly? True, because you cannot add that up 100% precisely because combustion engine and electric motor most of the time run at different RPM. The Newton meter output, however, is 700, impressive. The battery, on the other hand, is just 14 kWh. That's tiny for such a big PHEV. Remembering the BMW X5 plug-in hybrid has 24 kWh with around 80 km electric range, and the Mercedes GLE even 31 kWh with an electric range of 100 km. By this experience, the Touareg will rather remain at about 45 km pure electric range. Still, it can tow 3.5 tons or 7,700 pounds. That's quite important to Touareg customers. Surveys say that even the majority of Touareg customers also uses the SUV for towing. In the interior you get aluminum pedals, R entry badges, some R logos in the head restraints and so on, and contrast stitches. Unfortunately, Volkswagen does not know that much about sustainability yet, therefore they offer a PHEV model with animal skin seats only. Maybe take another school lesson with the Tesla Model X here. There are a lot of other features that come as standard equipment in the R version. The panoramic roof, 4-zone AC or the Innovation Cockpit, which consists out of the digital instruments in 12-inch on the left and the 15-inch Discover Premium infotainment system on the right. Standard for the Touareg, you still get analog gauges on the left and a 9.2-inch screen on the right. The latter one I would actually prefer because it has the simpler software, but not available for the top-spec Touareg R. They really want to go big on the digitalization in the Touareg R, also because you get special PHEV gauges like visualizations for energy flow, electric range or power output. You can also go into a battery-safe mode for later emission-free use and charge or sustain the battery on the motorway. Not efficient, but maybe at some point needed in city emission zones. So that's it for the new Touareg R. What do you guys think? We already have several Touareg reviews out there. Street, off-road, different engines and so on. You should check them all out. They will be linked in the video description and the pinned comment. And soon we can also take a spin in the new plug-in hybrid.
Hi, I'm Brian. Welcome to Autogefühl and welcome to our first behind-the-scenes peek at the brand new 5th generation Volkswagen Caddy. So, a bit of a journey here tonight. This is one of the most international cars that Volkswagen have ever produced. 40 years plus and over 3 million units delivered. This is where it all started with the Caddy 1. Well, things have changed quite a lot since then. Come with us and let's see how much they have. £1.85 in width or 73 inches. That is 62 millimeters wider than its predecessor. So what does that mean? Well, this vehicle has a particularly interesting history. It's one of the most international that Volkswagen have ever made because it covers so many different countries in its production. It started off being based on the Golf, then it went on to being based on the Polo, then it went on to being based on the Touran, and now we are to the most modern Volkswagen vehicle that's on offer, the MQB platform that's used for the Golf 8. So, consequently, the dimensions have significantly altered. What you're looking at here is not only aesthetically different, but a very different animal indeed to what's gone before. So, what does that mean in practical terms? Well, as you look at the car, I think the first thing that you notice is that the styling is radically different. Now, to me, the Caddy is and will always be primarily a commercial vehicle. Well, I think Volkswagen understand that, but there's still a significant nod here to bring it into the digital era and to make sure that the vehicle is representative not only of what they want to achieve with it, but also of the multiple different offerings that they have for this car now, which include a lot of personal use as well as professional use considerations. So, when you look at the bottom third here and you see this honeycombed grille, that really feels like a very modern definition as to how you want to approach a commercial vehicle. For my taste, I like the styling, but I am a little worried. To my way of thinking, commercial vehicles should first and foremost be built around practicality. I look at this, there is a huge amount of design, a very expensive looking instrument cluster in the middle, and I can't help but wonder, what does this cost to replace when my new hire drives this into the side of something? Well, fortunately, there are a raft of new assistance systems on this vehicle that should help to keep that only an idea, not a reality. 4 meters 50 or 177 inches, the car is now 93 millimeters longer. Again, that's because of the MQB platform. Now, we have to be somewhat selective about what we can film tonight, largely because there are so many people here, and managing to bring you a decent shot that can show you is a little constrictive. So this is the passenger version of this vehicle. But if you're looking at this thinking, well, that's not quite as exciting as I might have liked, maybe I would have wanted something a bit more dynamic in the change, I would caution you to think that the main reason for most of these aesthetic changes that you're currently looking at are aerodynamic. Now, that's actually much easier to see on the panel version of this car, but even with the passenger version, you can see these clean-cut lines that run along the side here. Now, there's been a lot of change with the engines as well, but I think it's well worth pointing out that Volkswagen are claiming 12% more efficient on engine use. Now, if you're looking at this vehicle for commercial reasons, that is not something to be sniffed at. So given that, what are you experiencing back here? Well, I can tell you that the height is now marginally shorter. Overall, a drop of around about this much, 7 millimeters in height. But interestingly, because of the utilization of that new MQB platform, that hasn't, not only has that not affected the internal storage, but you actually experience a bit of a boost as well. More about that when we get round to the back. In the meantime, this is the first time that a Caddy has been available with, of course, as an option, 18-inch alloy wheels. So I don't know how important it is to you to be styling while you're driving around delivering goods, but it's nice to know that the thought's been put in terms of the application for this car from a passenger point of view. And that's what you can see here. This is the fully recognized passenger vehicle. But for me, at its heart, this will always be about its commercial application. And in order to find out more about that, let's take a look round at the back. I think it's well worth mentioning at this point that traditional Volkswagen customers will be familiar with the idea of trend line, comfort line, high line. Those are the traditional way of delineating the layout of the cars and, of course, the way in which they're fitted. Well, that's all gone with this generation of Caddy. The 3 trim levels that are available for this vehicle will be the Caddy, the Life, and the Style. So the Style is the highest trim level, the Caddy being the base or entrance level trim. So just a little adjustment to get used to. I think one of the things, if you are a standard customer for the Caddy, that you will need to adjust to a little bit is there is now an awful lot more on offer. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be limited in terms of how you interact with it, only that whatever it is you want, there is now an option available for you to get it. Now, I'm a basic guy. I'll be completely honest. What I like is things that they're most simple. What I like most about the Caddy is the job that it does without all the bells and whistles. And a lot of thought has been put into delivering that in as thorough as a way without you adding option after option after option. But some of those are well worthwhile considering. That's to do with the technical side. We'll get onto that when we get indoors. What I want to show you for now is this massive expanse of rear area here. In load terms, that has a very significant impact in terms of how you can actually utilize this vehicle. Now, this car has been decked out for passengers, so we can see here a 7-seat configuration in the rear. Let me see if I can open this up. There we go. That is an awful lot of room. Now, in real terms, if you want to go with a short wheelbase Caddy, that means 3.3 cubic meters of space. But if you want to go with the long wheelbase, you can get up to 4. Not only is that significantly bigger than what's gone before, but, and this is the important point, because of the new aerodynamics, because of the new use of platform, because of that reduced height, it also comes with a significant reduction in fuel usage. But, and this is the thing that I really like, if you want a commercial long wheelbase vehicle, you also now have a much larger side door, which means you can load 2 full Euro pallets into the side of the car. And that makes a really big difference to an awful lot of people. As you can see here, we're configured to take 7 passengers. And what I particularly like about this experience is that, albeit that this is just the short wheelbase version, you can see you can actually realistically fit 7 people in here. Now, obviously not at the highest level of comfort you've ever experienced in your life, but it's good to know that you can achieve it. And what's nice about the way that this system has been organized is that it's extremely flexible, which means you don't have to spend a lifetime putting seats in, taking them out, and switching over again and again and again. You can actually leave these in here, and as you can see, you still end up with an awfully large amount of load space. Once you get inside is when things really start to change. Now, if you're a commercial buyer looking at all of this thinking, you know what, that's all great, Brian, but what I really want is just a van that does its job. Don't stress. There are still going to be plenty of options for you to get much more basic than what you are currently looking at. What you are currently looking at is the brand new Innovision cockpit. Now, clearly, this is the best that Volkswagen has on offer at the moment. Regular viewers who've experienced the Golf 8 will find this more than a little bit familiar. And for my taste, honestly, I'm quite excited to see this making its way into the world of commercial vehicles. If you're screaming at the screen right now, come on, we don't need that. It's not helpful, it's not useful. Wait. This system comes baked in with a thing called WeConnect Plus. Now, why do you care about that? Well, if you're a commercial business owner, then you might concern yourself with the commercial application of the add-on that you can get for this system, which allows direct reporting to you, direct controlling of your fleet, more economic management of who's where, what they're doing, and how that ties in. So one of the things that they dealt with in the presentation tonight, which I'm not 100% convinced of, but I think is very interesting, is that their systems directly report in all the time, which allows you to get, in theory, better traffic responses than using something like Google Maps. Why? Well, of course, Google Maps, or a similar version, is dependent upon real-time access to the internet. This system is built to deal without having that, because a lot of what it uses is already baked in. and it will work with the network to produce updated information. So therefore they claim that the fastest route between 2 points will always be offered by this system. Now, hopefully we'll have the chance to test that out in real time at some point in the future. But for now, what I can tell you is the two things that massively impressed me about the idea of where this car is going to, in the first place, if you do manage a commercial fleet, or even if you are a small business with just 2 vans, you will be aware that the number one thing that happens to you that you really don't want to happen but does frequently is one of your employees having a minor prang in your car. Now, with the assistance systems that are baked into this, and that means 6 brand new ones, including a rear collision assist, which basically allows you to see in your blind spot even when you can't, and also a trailer assist, and that comes in more handy than you might think, then you are much less likely to be having unforeseen accidents. And that's where we tie back in to the honeycomb grille at the front. I very much doubt that having anything fixed on this car is going to be a cheap proposition for you. So the important thing is to know that you reduce your risk. So if the sticker price of a new Caddy seems at first a little bit much to bear, you should factor in what it's going to save you, hopefully, in terms of fuel, in terms of speed and efficiency, thanks to the mapping, and in reduction of lost time due to accidents, hopefully very minor ones, that would have been avoidable if you'd have had the right tech on board. So, why do I say all of that? Well, being a traditionalist with a lot of experience of driving commercial vehicles, I understand that a lot of this looks as if it's here just for show. But what I'm saying is, before you just assume that, have a little look at your cost on your fleet over the past 12 months and ask yourself if really there maybe could have been a lot of benefit delivered if you had had some of these systems in place. Brilliantly, one of the things that the new Caddy absolutely delivers is an ability to be able to get exactly what you're looking for, exactly the way you want it. So, we only have this vehicle today. We hope we'll be able to test a lot more in the near future. But if you have very particular needs, I'm more than certain you're going to be able to find what you're looking for in the new lineup of Caddy. So all of that said, you're likely to be putting more miles onto a commercial vehicle than anything else you own. So attention to detail is really important. And here what we have are brand new seats. And I can tell you, you would think in the modern era that it was pretty common that seats would be really well put together and thought of. And I have to tell you that is not the case. These feel firm and supportive. I'm actually surprisingly low down in this vehicle. Well, you would expect it here, but I have stacks of headroom, obviously, here, because this is the very much person-used basis. We have a glass panoramic roof that is now available, stretching the length of the vehicle. Now, that's not a new idea for this class of vehicles, but I am pleased to see Volkswagen embracing that and doing it their way. What it does give me is a massively light, airy, and spacious feeling cabin, but one that is also very practical as well. There are large wells in the dashboard here for my documents or just extra things while I'm driving around. Everything feels very clean and very easy to keep clean in the interior. This is a brand new steering wheel, and again, it's a much more familiar experience to a car driver than it would be to somebody driving a commercial vehicle. So, albeit that this is the passenger model, you can get the very same experience in a commercial vehicle. I really have to say, I think they've done a very nice job of making whoever is driving this feel that they are not making a compromise by going with a commercial platform. And I think that's the key for a commercial platform crossover. Really, anyone who drives a vehicle that you buy for them or that you buy for yourself should feel really good about that purchase, because let's be honest, it isn't cheap. I've driven a lot of commercial vehicles in my time, and they were absolutely not as nice as this. That said, this is the top spec. I really am very excited to see the entrance level model as well. But in the meantime, it's very nicely delivered. I feel very comfortable in here. I have everything that I need laid out well before me. My road position is great. And you know what? I'm more than just a bit keen to take it out for a drive. It's a real shame at this point that you can't see Jonas. He is actually tying himself into spaghetti knots in order to be able to bring you this shot. But we really did want to bring you in a little bit more detail the displays here. That is the full driver's digital display, and over here, also 10 inches in diameter, you can see the infotainment system. Now, because this is primarily a commercial vehicle, everything should be based on ease of use. But don't forget that clearly this is just a show model and therefore doesn't function entirely as you might like it to. Now, what I really think is worth pointing out here is that one of the sales features of having a full digital system is that you do have baked into that essentially an app store. At any time, if there is an additional feature, either commercial or personal, that you want to add to your vehicle, you can actually enter the app store that's baked into the car and then buy add-ons. The thing I like about that is it means you're not paying for things you're not going to use and that aren't useful. But over time, you can actually upgrade and change your car. And as a commercial buyer, that's very attractive indeed, because there are certain things you don't necessarily know that you need the first time you take the car out that might actually end up being incredibly useful. For me, it largely comes down to whatever is going to save you the most time and money. That's as a business owner. As a personal owner, I find it really very encouraging that I don't have to be sold on things that I don't necessarily want. And I suspect that this is the way in which the market's moving. I think it will be a much more buy-as-you-want menu system than standardly coming in, paying for a certain level, and then you get the things that are associated with that. So that's my pitch as to why you would want to consider the full digital version. That said, well, you know, like I said, I'm a bit of a fan of commercial vehicles, and this all feels a little bit modern for me. So I'm pleased to see if Jonas brings the camera slightly lower down, there are still lots of very old school, nice personal touches that have been put into this design. Look at this. So you have an inductive charging pad under here, and that's for your phone. But we still need to store things in the same space. Thank you for still giving us a 12-volt charge point right here. And the future comes along with 2 USB-Cs right alongside it. Once you get in the back, not only do you really appreciate those sliding doors, but you also appreciate the way that things have been finished back here. You really have a huge expanse of light and air, largely because of this panoramic roof that's new for this edition, but also because of the way that the seats have been configured within the vehicle. There is more than enough space. Now, I don't have particularly long legs. Jonas does. But if you look at my knees, you can see that there is still plenty of room for you to adjust, even if you are significantly taller than I am. As far as head height's concerned, well, what would you expect? It's designed to take Euro pallets. So honestly, I don't think there's anyone big enough to make this vehicle feel crowded. Nope, pretty sure even if you play in the NBA, you're still going to have enough headroom. Let's take a closer look at what's powering this thing. Well, I'm very excited to tell you that what you're looking at is one of the diesel engines. There are 3 available at launch, varying in power between 75 to 122 horsepower. There is a petrol, of course, also a 4-cylinder producing 116 horsepower, and that's coming very shortly after launch. Why is that the way it's working? Well, you should be aware that 80% plus of all Caddies currently sold are being sold with diesel engines. So it's hardly surprising that they're launching with those first. The really big news on this is that it comes with twin catalytic converters. That allows for double dosing. You're aware of the blue liquid that we all add to our engines now in order to make them run cleaner. Well, that makes this one of the cleanest diesel engines that is available anywhere for anything. Obviously, after what's gone before, Volkswagen are very keen to ensure that their offerings are as sustainable as they can possibly be. Now, the big question for the Caddy on everybody's lips is, yes, but will there be an electric version? They're still keeping quite tight-lipped about that. I'm not sure if it's going to go full electric for this model, but there will be a hybrid later on. So if that's of big interest to you, then hold on, it's coming. But in the meantime, there will also be a CNG model joining a little bit later on as well. I think this gives you just a little bit of sense with my only concern about the new Caddy, and that is an attempt that very much feels to be being made to be all things to all people. This is the new Pan Americana. Now, I'm sure this is going to have a big, loyal following of people who will love this. I just wonder a little bit if in diffusing the brand and making it be so many different things, if there is a benefit there. But you know what? I'm really keen to hear what you think about that. Now, that said, there are some really interesting styling details on this particular model. Largely, as you can see, all of the chrome is gone, all of the obvious body color matching is gone. We now have these black wheel arches, and this has a much more rugged feel. Well, that's not just a styling detail. This thing is also all-wheel drive. So it is a little bit more rugged. You can be a little bit more adventurous with it, and I think the styling suggests that. Is that going to relate to enough people in a strong enough way to form a viable future market? Do you know what? I'm really interested to find out. But before then, I'm very keen to hear what you think about this. I wanted to end with where my heart belongs, and hopefully because of this circus you can get some impression as to why we weren't able to film here the whole time, but I did want to show you this very much. This is the Caddy in its purest form. This is its commercial application. And the reason that this is so interesting to me is specifically because what's been achieved with the aerodynamics here. So you could look at this and say, well, that's flat, it's not all that exciting, I don't really know that much is happening here, but that belies the extraordinary engineering that's gone into producing this car. Every single detail here, albeit that it might look as if it's not significant, goes into reducing that aerodynamic drag and increasing the fuel efficiency, and that's everything for this vehicle. But not only that, enhanced loading facility, making the space work better, cleaner, more efficiently, all adds up to making this car something that you can really see people are going to wanting to be owning and driving for as long and as successfully as the Caddy's history would suggest. So, what do we think about the new Caddy? He asked in a very echoey, ominous voice. I think it promises a huge amount. Whether it can live up to everything it promises, well, we can only wait and see. But if the 3 million people who've already invested in making this car a success have anything to do with it, then I think the future looks very bright indeed. Well, it would be remiss of us to end the clip without bringing you this. This is the Caddy vision, and to my way of thinking, if a rapper wanted to own a Caddy, this would be the one they would go for. As you can see, everything here has been pretty stylized, including the nice big black alloys right down to the extensive use of piano black throughout the design. I think it's a good thing that Volkswagen are really considering their customers on a larger base. But you know what? As nice as this is, I'm still always going to be the guy stuck halfway down a motorway, sitting in my Caddy, and I'm only going to be asking one question. Am I comfortable, and is this cost effective to drive? I hope that's probably consistent for most owners. Let me know if you think I'm wrong about that. But in the meantime, if you have any comments or questions about anything and we haven't covered it, please put it below. Please subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and we hope we'll see you all again soon.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Autogefühl. Today with me AJ and Thomas B. This weekend we are here in Barcelona at the Cupra factory, just a couple hours outside of the city. And we are here for the world premiere of the new Cupra Leon. So stick around and we'll take a closer look at this hot hatch. So here it is, ladies and gentlemen, the 4th generation Leon. The headlamps are now very much horizontal, a totally different design. The previous generation had a more wider headlamp with another angle down here. But at the same time, there are nice detailing around the edges. You also have this daytime running light signature, a very strong muscular bumper down here, flanked by these vertical gray cosmetic elements. These are all cosmetic inlays, but they still seem like they have some aerodynamic effect to channel the air towards the side of the car. Overall, a very striking bumper. The entire front of the car seems to be narrowing itself, coming towards the front in this very concentrated area. Of course, the new Cupra logo taking center stage with this very tribal art-looking, copper-colored delta wing-shaped logo down here. So overall, I think I just need a little bit more time to feel much more comfortable with this design. But what do you guys think? Do you like the way the new Leon looks, or do you prefer the previous design? So the new Leon has certainly grown in size. It's now 4.37 meters long. That's about 9 centimeters longer than the previous generation. In fact, the wheelbase is also longer than the current Mark 8 Golf, the same wheelbase as the Skoda Octavia. So we'll see how that fares once we actually get our hands on the car and get to drive it out on the street and hopefully on the racetrack, because a longer wheelbase definitely means there's more stability, but sometimes that comes at the compromise of agility. But nevertheless, you do have some new wheel designs. This is the 19-inch wheel design. I really like this. This is also the plug-in hybrid version of the car, and we'll talk about the engines in a little bit. But this is also kind of having that pseudo aerodynamic electric hybrid kind of design, because it's got quite a lot of cover on the rims itself. But I do like the copper accents. Going further along the side of the car, typical with the previous generation Seat Leon as well as the other Seats and Cupras, there is one very sharp design line at the top, which fades away at the back of the door here. But at the same time, there is another line that's coming in from here. In the previous generation, these lines were a little bit staggered. You would have one line from the front coming down here and the line from the back going a little bit higher, but now they seem to be at the same level. So this also gives the car a much longer appearance. There's also a very strong side skirt down here. The Cupra Leon is actually lower than the Seat Leon. Of course, this is to improve the center of gravity and improve the handling overall. A very subtle but very elegant spoiler here, integrated into the rear hatch. A pretty sharp rake line, and as you can see, the new tail lamps, and we'll take a closer look once we come around, they also wrap around quite a bit towards the side profile of the car. So I think I like the side profile a lot more than I like the front. What do you guys think? I personally like the rear of the new Leon because I think there's a lot more shapes, a lot more contours. It's very sculptural, very three-dimensional, and I actually do really like this horizontal LED light strip. This LED light in the rear also has a lot of cascading and animated functions. So when you unlock the car and lock it, the light will cascade all around. The turn indicators are also animated. So I think this new rear design is very cool. We see this in a lot of performance cars, especially in the Volkswagen family, all the way up to the Porsche. So I don't know, I think it's pretty cool. The sharper rake angle here for the rear window is a little bit more evident here, but at the same time you do have this very strong lip. Then you have like the scooped down section right here in the hatch. Cupra stamping very bold and glossy black with that logo right in the center. As we go further down, as you can see right here on the nameplate, this is the e-hybrid, the plug-in hybrid version. So that means, unfortunately, if you take a look over here, yes, these are just cosmetic exhaust tips. But do not fear, the 2-liter turbo petrol engines do have actual exhaust tips, and I'm sure they sound great. But yeah, here you do have cosmetic exhaust tips in the copper finish color, kind of like a dual port exhaust kind of a design on either side, but there is a very nice rear diffuser as well. So overall, definitely very athletic, very youthful, and very sexy, I think. Let's take a look underneath the hood at what powers the new Cupra Leon. But before that, quick word about the regular Seat Leon. The Seat Leon comes with a wide variety of powertrain options. So you have turbo petrol, turbo diesel, CNG and plug-in hybrid as well. Starting off with the very familiar 1-liter 3-cylinder turbo petrol engine, which makes 90 horsepower. There's also the 1.5-liter turbo 4 petrol engine with 150 horsepower, and so on. But here in the Cupra Leon, you get either a plug-in hybrid version, like the one you see here, or the 2-liter turbo 4 petrol engine. This plug-in hybrid makes a combined output of 245 horsepower that is basically coming from a 1.4-liter turbo petrol engine and an electric motor and a 13 kilowatt-hour battery. You can drive the plug-in hybrid for up to 60 kilometers on pure electric mode only, and you can charge it up to 100% in 3.5 hours with a wall box. But if this doesn't tickle your fancy, there's of course the 2-liter turbo 4 petrol engine, a very versatile engine in the VW family, the EA888 that we know quite well, of course advanced now, and that you can either get with 245 horsepower, just like this, 300 horsepower, and 310 horsepower as well. The 245 and the 300 are front-wheel drive with a limited slip differential, and you get the 310 only in the Sport Tour, the Estate version, with all-wheel drive. Unfortunately, though, the bad news is there is no manual option anymore. It's all the new shift-by-wire dual-clutch transmission only. Take a look inside. First of all, there's a pretty cool puddle lamp here with the Cupra Tribal Art logo, which of course you cannot see now because it's quite bright in the studio, but that's pretty cool. The door opens really wide, so making ingress really easy. Let's take a look at the materials on the door. You have soft touch at the top, a nice contrasting glossy element of plastic inlay over here, so soft materials down here and here as well. And even down here, even though this is hard, it's got a nice perforated textured design, which I really like. So even though it's probably not a most expensive material, it still makes it feel very luxurious and very cool. Something new also about the new Leon is the LED interior light. So there's light down here, which provides a nice hue, but as well as along the top of the door, which continues as you look inside all the way along the top of the dash, kind of wrapping you in this cockpit cocoon like ambiance. The seats, by the way, are bucket seats here because it's of course the Cupra, so the performance version. And yes, you do get full textile fabric only options, which is really great to see. But of course there is also a full leather option. The one you see here is the black leather, but there is also a petrol blue. Let's get inside. Well, first of all, what really grabs your attention is this new steering wheel. And I must say, it does look really cool, really menacing, almost alien-like, like an alien starship from a video game, I don't know, with this logo and all of these this copper color. The vents, by the way, as you can see, the design is very similar to the front grille, so kind of has a very cohesive design language. A lot of shapes and, you know, like a little canyon over here. So it does feel very futuristic, very, very tribal. I don't know, I really like it. There is some interesting inlay as well along the center with the same color that we saw on the door, which runs along the middle of the dashboard. The materials are also really soft touch. I can even bend this material over here, and even around here is not too bad, but of course as we go lower it does get a bit harder. But I think the steering wheel has a great grip. This also is the new capacitive steering, so which means that, for example, for the lane keeping assist, Previously, the technology would be that it would just monitor how, if you had the steering wheel in the same position for too long, then it would conclude that you didn't have your hands on the steering wheel, and hence this could result in a lot of false positives. This actually happened to me as well when I was testing the Skoda Scala. But now these steering wheels actually have a capacitive sensor, so they can sense when you're actually holding them or not. New shift-by-wire DSG with great paddle shifters, as you can see over here. A lot of buttons to control your navigation, the menu, and the assistance systems. But also the engine start-stop button is right here on the steering wheel. I don't know, this kind of reminds me of a Ferrari. And of course the Cupra drive mode selector right over here. Anyway, hop inside and let's take a closer look at some of the instruments. So first off, you'll notice the new 10.25-inch virtual cockpit digital instruments, and along with this very large 10-inch touchscreen as well. There's a lot of customization options with the instrument cluster, as you can see. Many different views that you can use, including having a map on the dash as well. You can even kind of customize the individual areas. Like right now I have 3 areas, and if I use this, I can toggle between different controls for this area. I can jump in here and I can toggle between my driver assistance systems. Like this has the adaptive cruise control, the limiter, side assist, rear traffic alert, front assist. This is also an advanced version of this technology. But at the same time, I can also control things like my vehicle status, oil temperature, so on and so forth. So a lot of useful information, maybe a little bit too complicated, but once we have our hands to do a full test and a full review of this car, spend some time with these systems, we can kind of tell you how we feel about it and what it has. There's also a steering wheel heating button over here. And as we move our attention to the infotainment system, of course this is the top end version. There's plenty of options that you can have with this, but as you can see, most of the controls are completely with this interface here. There are very few buttons, even for the air conditioning. You have to use this air conditioning system right over here. You can swipe, you can tap, you can make it hotter or colder, the temperature. This is the volume control over here. So it's not that intuitive. It does take a little bit of time to get used to it, and there is no capacitive feedback right now. So I don't really know if I'm pressing them hard enough or so on and so forth. But again, a full thorough test will reveal how these systems really fare. You do have Android Auto and Apple CarPlay to connect your phone. There is an inductive phone charger port down there, a couple USB-C ports as well. So very clean design. We'll take a closer look at the center console, but I wish there were a few more buttons. And once the market specifications of the options are revealed, then we'll see what other options we have for the infotainment system, and if you can get one with actual physical buttons, which I would always prefer. All right, let's take a look at the center console. And as you'll see, the lack of a large shifter, because this is the shift-by-wire system now, a really tiny tab just to flick back and forth to get into the different gears. Of course, you can use the Cupra button on the steering wheel to actually change the driving mode. You don't have a drive mode selector here. So you have Comfort, Normal, Sport, and Cupra, and you can set up individual parameters for an individual mode as well. But this, the lack of these extra driving mode buttons and the lack of a big shifter means that there's plenty of space right here. There's a couple cubby holes on either side, electronic parking brake, auto hold, and also the door lock. A couple beverage holders, which are pretty useful, very square and polygonal in shape rather than circular, however, and a 12-volt power socket here in the central cubby with an armrest which you can move and raise. So overall, finding a comfortable seating position seems to be fairly good. These seats also have really good side bolstering. They also are, completely adjustable for the amount of side bolstering. They're all electronically adjustable with memory. So finding a really nice driving position, as well as moving the steering wheel column, I think you can have a very comfortable drive on the Autobahn. But when you want to go into the track, press this magic button and let the beast unleash itself. Let's take a look in the back seat. The back door is actually a little bit longer now. That's also because of the longer wheelbase, and hence there is more body here. Another benefit of that longer wheelbase means that there is a little bit more space here in the back seat. As you can see, this seat is set to my driving position. I'm about 5'8" or 1.7 meters thereabouts, and even with the seat low, in a very low position, I still have plenty of knee room. There is just about enough space for me to slide my feet underneath the seat. The bench itself is really comfortable. The reclining angle is also not too steep or too relaxed. I think overall it's pretty good. Also nice arm headrest. There is a small sunroof, not a panoramic roof in this case, so I do get a little bit more light, but at the same time there is a little bit of an extra beam that runs through right here, but also have plenty of headroom. There is a transmission tunnel here in the middle, so a third passenger will have to fight for foot space, but you do have a third climate zone here with buttons to set the temperature, a couple of vents, and a couple USB chargers. Isofix points for child seats on the outside 2 seats, a center armrest with some cup holders which can be folded down as a ski hatch as well. So like I said, you do get the Cupra Leon as a 5-door hatch like the one here, but also an estate. The 5-door hatch has a trunk capacity of 380 liters, that's 380. The estate has 617 liters, that's 617 liters. But this is pretty useful in itself. It's very rectangular. There is very little, contours from the wheel arches. They're not, impeding into the space. It's very rectangular, very usable. There is a little bit of a lip, but you do lose some space as well because of the plug-in hybrid system here in this version. But on the whole, it is fairly usable. You also can remove the parcel shelf very easily and fold the seats in a 60-40 fashion, as you can see, to carry those longer items, and they do fold fairly flat, so you do have a flat loading area. Here we see the Sport Tourer version, the Estate version. Of course, this is longer. This is 4.64 meters long. The trunk capacity is, of course, significantly larger. This is 617 liters. But the design lines are pretty much the same. You do have one large line in the front and the one in the back, like the one we saw in the 5-door hatch as well. In this new generation, the line is pretty much along the same. It just fades away for a while, but it's in the same level. A large side skirt as well. We have some different wheels here, and this is because this has the 2-liter petrol engine only. And the Estate you can also have, with the 310 horsepower all-wheel drive. The full top flagship version is only available in this Estate configuration. I am here with Matthias Ekstrom. As I live and breathe, it's an honor. Big fan. I mean, I know you from Rallycross, but you are also the driver of the ETCR Leon Cupra, the full electric touring car, race car that we see behind here. But I also know that you are, very much involved in consulting Cupra, in designing and developing the new Leon that we see here at this premiere. So maybe we can start off by talking about your experience, with your vast rallycross and racing experience. What are some of the key things that, that are different about the new ETCR, the new electric Leon Cupra?
Yeah, I mean, compared to the previous one, they have learned a lot for sure, and I've been giving my feedback. So in the new car, you have the latest evolution from the suspension geometry and aerodynamics. I don't have much to do. There are the designers and the efficient guys, the bosses. Then when it comes to the handling, we haven't driven that car yet. So you have to be careful when you touch it. The color is still fresh. So no, we are soon going to drive it, and really looking forward to this. When it comes to the new Leon, I've been driving it, so we're trying to give feedback, and slowly but gently, I'm becoming a hybrid fan because you have the best of both worlds. And when it comes to the shifting strategy, I've been helping some feedback there with the feedback in the steering and also with the different driving modes. That when you put it in Cupra, it should behave like a race car, in my opinion. So I tried to squeeze the engineers to say, make it more sporty, make it precise. Steering should be precise but not heavy. It's a little bit of a balance act to find something that's good enough for a daily driver, but still sporty enough that people can say, oh, I'm excited to go in the car again.
I know that first of all, the new generation is quite a lot different in terms of the hardware. So, for example, the wheelbase is now longer than the outgoing Leon as well. But according to you, how much of Matthias Ekstrom is in the new Leon Cupra, and what are the few things that, according to you, it makes a lot of difference compared to its siblings? There's quite a lot of siblings in the portfolio of VW as well. What sets the Leon apart? And how much of your DNA is imbibed in the handling of the new Leon Cupra?
I mean, on this specific car, I've been helping for shifting and for steering, but there will come some projects where I will be a part earlier of the process. So, yes, you will feel that race drivers have put their fingers on it, but again, there will be extreme projects coming, but I'm already happy like it is now that I think people will enjoy driving it, and that's the bottom line. We should make cars that handles well, and for me, balance is the key. So when you turn the steering wheel, you hit the gas, it should have the flow. A bit like people who go skiing, they say carving. I love when the car is carving because no understeer, no oversteer. If you get it sideways, it should be with all four-wheel drifting, and even if you don't drive fast, it should feel precise and dynamic.
Well said. I mean, coming from you itself, you said a little bit about how it should carve corners. A very great metaphor there. And what, according to you, I know you said you also like the e-hybrid. Of course, you still have the 2-liter turbo 4 petrol engine as well. But there's also the two front-wheel drive and the all-wheel drive variants. So according to you, what do you think is more closer to the race cars that you're used to? Perhaps four-wheel drive coming from rallycross, but with your experience driving the new Cupra, the Leon, what do you prefer? What is your personal favorite?
I've always been, and I think I will always be a big fan to have four-wheel drive. And I mean, it's a taste for everyone. For sure, at one stage, it's also cost of car. In the end, the balance is one thing, but when you're on winter roads, slippery, ice, snow, there's not much beating going flat out sideways with a four-wheel driven car and enjoy that. So for me, I will always select Quattro four-wheel drive first. So once you go on tarmac in the summer, the four-wheel drive, front-wheel drive has an advantage of the a bit less weight. Right. So tarmac, I don't really mind, but when it's slippery, four-wheel drive.
I mean, fantastic talking to you. Thank you so much for your time. And I'm excited to get my hands on the wheel of the new Leon Cupra. Maybe do a little bit of that sideways action you were talking about. Hopefully we can bring that out on the new videos.
If you're really kind to me, you might even get to try this one day. But then you have to behave well.
I will take your card and I will give you a call. Cheers. I'm here with Mr. Joaquim Garcia, who is the head of the department for the exterior design for the new Cupra Leon. So first of all, thank you so much for taking time to talk to us about the new design, because first and foremost, this is a significant departure. And I was just telling you earlier, I really liked the previous generation Leon's design. I thought it was, just had the right amount of angles and sharpness and youthfulness, if that's a word, to distinguish itself from the Golf. And the new Golf 8 compared to the Golf 7 is more evolutionary, whereas this with the previous generation, Leon 3 to 4 is quite dramatic. So, first and foremost, is that because you want to have a more unique identity now for the new Leon, not just because of the new Leon, but also because the new Cupra Leon? So what are the things that you guys started when you started designing this car? What did you bring to the table that you wanted to accomplish, and how did you go about achieving that?
Well, you expressed it pretty well. Definitely when we were designing the Leon and the Cupra Leon, that we developed at the same time in parallel. So we made sure that they were both complementary to one another. Both cars, of course, share the same base and the fantastic proportions, and this is one of the big steps ahead if you compare to the previous generations. And in the case of the Cupra Leon, that is what we are seeing tonight, you're right that we wanted to also have a certain uniqueness in it. You have to think that first of all we have a fantastic performance under the hood, and this is the soul, if you want, of the car. But then, being a different brand, being Cupra, starting with the strong logo in the front, already brings to the car a strong personality. Of course, if you talk more in detail about the design of the car, you can see that it's a very really spectacular, very striking design in the front, very bold, very self-confident, and also, as I said, due to the performance, it has also some specific details. For example, all the wing that you see here, that is integrating the air curtains on the side grills for the intercooler, the specific design of the mesh of the grille that is inspired by this axis of symmetry of the logo. For us, is the symmetry or the balance between performance and style, you know, and this is very important for us. Of course, all the treatment in terms of color and trim, it's also contributing enormously. You have the specific body color, a specific finish of the parts that are very rich, very, very different, but at the same time, quite understated, quite discreet. You know, it's very strong presence, but it's not loud, you know? So I'd like to take you through the car to show you some of the details. Obviously, the wheels are another good example. We have 19-inch wheels with a specific lightweight design and the application of the copper color, which is, if you like, the one of the landmarks of Cupra. The copper color means much more than a color. It means also that the material itself, copper, is a fantastic material. It's a material that is an excellent conductor for electricity. It's a material that is very noble without being a precious material. We don't want to show luxury. We want to show performance. We want to show a genuine, authentic character. So, and this helps us for the philosophy. Then on the side of the car, I continue with the current trim treatment, which is very important. Of course, in the interior, this goes on with fantastic seats, again, an excellent color and material definition, and many details in the inside. Of course, the steering wheel is specific with all the performance items in it. On the side, we have the side skirt that is contributing to this kind of visual effect of bringing the car down to the road, you know, really very sticking to the road. It's also helping for the aerodynamics. And then towards the rear, once more, we find this very refined, very, very sophisticated, but at the same time pretty strong message of having a car which is very wide looking, with a very nice stance on the road. And then down here, I'd like to also highlight that on the Cupra, we show the exhaust pipes. It's something also, again, very genuine, very authentic. I mean, this car has a really remarkable power. So it's something we want to show.
This is the full petrol engine version.
This is the full petrol engine. On the other car, you can see the plug-in hybrid version. But altogether, it's, once more, it's very strong statement, but at the same time refined and with a certain discretion, you know, certain simplicity and uniqueness.
So we had a very quick look at the world premiere here for the new Cupra Leon. Fortunately, we didn't get to drive it, but that's going to be coming up in a future episode, so make sure you stay tuned for that. Overall, I think the design is a lot more fresh now, has its own unique identity, a bit of a departure from the previous generation, but performance-wise as well, there's more options with a plug-in hybrid version as well. So let me know what you guys think. Do you like the new plug-in hybrid version as an option? And would you pick that? Or would you stick to the full petrol version only? Let me know, put it down in the comments below.